Hare Hare,
Hare
Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so reading from introduction to speaking about Varnashram. We are in the paragraph that begins that good instruction and supportive counseling.
So there's a PDF of it? I can send that. You should probably post it in the ashram comment.
Okay, so we could start reading.
Mm-hmm.
When I want to volunteer, because I don't.
Okay.
Talking for most
Can
part.
I read from your book until you find it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what's the story of the paragraph?
That good instruction and supportive counseling.
Which page?
There's no page now.
No page. Okay. That good instruction and supportive counseling have been kindly provided by our founder Acharya, Prabhupada. Present research, Prabhupada on Varnashram and farm community development, is an effort to bring together all of Srila Prabhupada's instructions on Varnashram Dharma and the farm communities which he saw as the building blocks of Varnashram social structure. Now we have a chance to hear from Prabhupada himself, the answer to our questions and concerns regarding the topic of Varnashram social organization. This first volume, speaking about Varnashram, focuses on Prabhupada's actual spoken conversations and lectures about Varnashram. Why focus on spoken words, one may ask? Isn't everything we need to know in Prabhupada's books? In fact, the fundamental message of Prabhupada's books and his conversations or lectures is the same. Dedicate your human form of life to serving Krishna. But the details and the emphasis that Prabhupada gives when in direct conversation with his disciples is sometimes different. Disciples are able to bring their specific questions to Prabhupada's attention, especially as they relate to current-day affairs and practical matters. In turn, Prabhupada, inspired by the devotees' interest, offers spontaneous response to their inquiry, which gives a fresh understanding of the topics at hand. Thus there is special value in these spoken passages, and since they are generally harder to access in written form, it is worth gathering them together in one volume for study and reference. Himavati Dasi recounts a 1975 exchange between an ISKCON Governing Body Commission officer and Prabhupada at Mayapur reunion. The GBC officer complained, "There are so many Prabhupada saids, better only to accept what is in the books and tapes." Prabhupada replied, "No, what I say in my talks also, many things I say are not in my books."
So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward that, we're going to be hearing from Prabhupada. It's supposed to be the first volume, and then we were supposed to go on with it. Didn't really go on. But yeah, at least we have this book. So, yeah, continue. You want to continue?
Give me a second.
Hearing his conversations and lectures.
Hearing his conversations and lectures in chronological order gives us the chance to examine the evolution of Srila Prabhupada's Varnashram presentation over time. During the earliest days, he presents Varnashram as an ideal social structure, but one which is probably not possible for the present age. Nevertheless, even in the early period, he is intent on creating Brahmana devotees who would provide a head for society, giving it sound spiritual guidance. During the middle period, he proposes the ISKCON's Brahmanas provide the leadership to create a model of Varnashram in which the rest of the world can also be included. In the final phase, he presents Varnashram as an important preaching tool and a structure to be implemented initially within our ISKCON society, with devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement participating at every level. Right from the beginning of his preaching, Prabhupada believed that an important strategy for spreading Krishna consciousness was to create a body of brahmanas, devotees who were willing to follow strict standards of spiritual discipline and who would devote their lives to studying and conveying the message of the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam to others. The Vedic institution of hereditary brahmanas could not be maintained in the modern age. He explained to disciples at a 1969 Gayatri Mantra initiation in Boston. Everyone, even in India, had to be considered a Sudra due to the absence of the Garbhadhana Samskar, ritual sanctifying the conception of a child. But even though it was not possible to rely on the Vedic Vidhi in the current age, legitimate brahmanas could still be created by following the Pancharat Trika Vidhi, or devotional regulations established by the ancient sage Narada Muni and endorsed by the medieval Vaishnava saint Sanatan Goswami in his Hari Bhakti Vilas, which is accepted Vaishnava Smriti or authorized Vaishnava scripture.
You read the next paragraph also, it's kind of related to it. So.
Okay. In offering brahminical initiation to disciples following the Panchatriki Vidhi method, Prabhupada was continuing the example set by his own spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami, who had received his Panchatriki Vidhi process even in the face of strong protests by Indians' hereditary brahmanas. These Smarta brahmanas had objected when Sudras were offered brahminical initiation by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, and they became more upset later on when Srila Prabhupada began to offer brahminical initiation to Westerners who, according to their standards, were not even up to the level of Sudras. But Prabhupada staunchly defended the initiation, citing his spiritual master in Sanatana Goswami. Furthermore, it was Prabhupada's conviction that women could be included within the parameters of Sanatana Goswami's instructions for brahminical initiation, and thus he extended the offer of brahminical initiation to them as well.
So, here the evolution of Srila Prabhupada's Varnashrama presentation is something that's really, really important to note as we read this book, because initially you're going to find a very different kind of message than you will find it later in this book. I personally saw it as I read through the book, and I was quite like, wow. So initially Srila Prabhupada, as it said, he just talks about Varnashram as being an ideal social structure, but not something that we can implement right now. And just explaining how things are degraded right now, and that's kind of it. And everybody is temple devotees, you're all Vaishnavas, doesn't have to worry about anything, worship the deity, distribute books, perform Sankirtan, Grahastha, Brahmachari, everybody lives full time in the temple. Children also go into the Gurukul and become, Vaishnavas, that's kind of it. In fact, there's no Gurukul even back in the 1960s, is a concept also. Prabhupada starts talking a little bit about it, but not so much. So then Prabhupada, he speaks, we're Brahmanas, we're supposed to give guidance to society. We need to establish a model where devotees just play the roles, but that they're not actually that roles. It's just a model. And even not even so much a model, but we give the concept. As Brahmanas, we teach that concept. And then the society can implement it. Outside society can implement it. And towards the end, Prabhupada says, no, we need to do this within our society for our devotees. So that's a big shock. It's like, wow, we have to do this for ourselves. We thought we don't have to do this. We thought we're Vaishnavas. And then Prabhupada said, no, to be Vaishnava is not so cheap. It's not so easy. So that this is how Prabhupada evolved. He says, no, this is for our devotees. And then when we do it for our devotees, others also will learn and will see this and they'll also join. So that was Prabhupada's because initially he doesn't talk about having it within our society. Towards the end, he's pushing it like anything, to the extent that he says we're embarking on a new phase of our movement. So, yeah. Okay.
Prabhupada's convictions were validated by tangible results. Everyone from Indian government leaders to Western scholars and police
This
chiefs.
is a database.
I couldn't find it.
Do you want to tell you how to find it? Anyway, I could bring it up if you want.
Sure. Just kidding.
Yeah, go on.
Police chiefs was impressed that Prabhupada could take Westerners from a culture saturated with illicit sex, drugs, and meat eating and convert them to exemplary followers of Vaishnava culture. Prabhupada was proud of his disciples. In a commentary on the 4th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he states, preachers in the Krishna consciousness movement have actually experienced that even the Yavanas and Malechas have taken to spiritual life on the strength of Narada Muni's Pancharatrika Vidhi. But success was not unmitigated. On one hand, Prabhupada's move to create brahmanas had produced a core group of devotees who could follow rigid standards of temple living and act as knowledgeable preachers of Krishna conscious philosophy. But on the other hand, a large percentage of those initiated gradually faded out of active participation in Krishna consciousness. They were not able to maintain rigorous Brahminical standards required for living in a temple. For some, temple life was almost like a boot camp in the U.S. Marine Corps. It was a test of endurance. If the Marine Corps slogan was, "Are you good enough to get in?" ISKCON's slogan seemed to be, "Are you good enough to stay in?"
So this is the main point that Prabhupada started to face. It's a huge issue. It's like, you know, in one hand, initially devotees joined with a very ideal, mindset that, I mean, at least most devotees, when they join, they just want to do this for the rest of their life. And then, especially those who are brahmacharis, like that's it, brahmachari for life, finished. And then you kind of reject everything and you come in. And then after some years, due to different reasons, most devotees would get married. And then of those who are getting married, for them to consider living full-time, just go through the same, lifestyle. It's just basically, as Mataji puts it here very nicely, it's like a boot camp in the U.S. Marine Corps. It's like, are you good enough to stay in? It's a really stark exposition of, and this is what Prabhupada was facing. He had hundreds of devotees who joined, and all so many struggling. And Prabhupada was seeing that. Initially, Prabhupada was hopeful. I have a marriage. Okay, no problem, you can get married. You marry this person, you marry that person, finished. And Prabhupada expected them to stick together and just stay, in the name of practicing Krishna consciousness and working towards the mission of the spiritual master. What is the problem? But they couldn't. They just couldn't. And Prabhupada was facing so many problems. And sannyasis who were determined to preach and this and that, and they're all struggling, and they're saying, "Oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to follow this." Some are falling, others are having. That was kind of the major issue, was illicit sex that Srila Prabhupada was faced with. But then, other than that, also he had other issues. It's just that devotees were they were starting to show a lot of signs of weakness. And it's amazing, because if you think about what they were doing back then, you would not think that they were weak by any means. But Prabhupada saw the signs of it. And so that's a really, really, really important point here, that most devotees cannot maintain rigorous Brahminical standards required for living in a temple. It's quite hard. At some point of time, devotees, they feel, it's like there's a level of what you could call a level of fatigue is not the right word, but something like fatigue, where you kind of just get a little exasperated. And but Srila Prabhupada, being an acharya and understanding that these are his disciples, wanted to give a solution that would help them. That because they are his disciples, he wants them to be Krishna conscious. And those who are practicing Krishna consciousness, one of the aspects of Krishna consciousness is asat sangatyag, hey Vaishnavachar. He didn't want that just because there was a limited temple atmosphere, that devotees end up going and associating with the karmis and go into karmi society. He didn't want this. So therefore Srila Prabhupada strived to create an environment where devotees could still practice Krishna consciousness and raise a family. Because there were so many reasons that they were reading, but mainly this. But there were other also, because there were people who couldn't see themselves distributing books for the rest of their life. And then what are they going to do? I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life. So then they may not go out because but just because they didn't find any other engagement, they decided to leave. So therefore Srila Prabhupada wanted to bring the Varnashram system whereby devotees are engaged according to their natures. Because Asat Sangha is never an option. It's I mean, you know, at least Srila Prabhupada felt that devotees should be given, and that this is Prabhupada's great compassion. He didn't have to do it. He didn't have to do it because our philosophy allows. It allows. Okay, you can be working outside, and you know the whole philosophy of a woman, you know, falling in love with her paramour, and that you go and you execute, you do different tasks with people outside, but actually your heart is somewhere else. It's all good, but especially the modern environment, the modern society is extremely degrading to one's consciousness. It's very dangerous. It's very difficult also. Most devotees, they flop. What is the proof? The history is the proof. Most devotees who left the movement didn't leave the movement with the intention that they were going to stop practicing Krishna consciousness. Most left whatever, because of, they were fried out with the zonal acharyas, or they were fried out with this, that. But they never thought that they were, most of them didn't think that they were going to stop, that's it, I'm done chanting Hare Krishna. But that's what ended up happening to most of them. They actually so many just fizzled out. That's why sometimes you meet them, they're like, oh yeah, that was the best times in my life. They're not like, they don't talk about it as if it's something that they hated like anything. But they did hate the circumstances which caused them to leave. But the philosophy itself, they liked it. We met this Mataji, she's not the perfect example, but she's renting this house now for the Matajis, and she joined as a brahmacharini in Denver back in the early 80s. And she said, oh my God, Mother Nidra, if I could ever meet her again. Those were the best days of my life. She's like, but I couldn't keep up with it. I couldn't keep up with it. So it's a big challenge, to be able to open the doors, to be able to allow. So at least people like her, they're not resentful. They just left because they just couldn't keep up with it. Whatever. She was never initiated or anything. She just there for some time. But this is a very, very important part. This is elaborated further in the following paragraph. So you continue.
Prabhupada realized that such a strict approach would inhibit most people from adopting Krishna consciousness. By March 1974, we hear him outlining his plans for the creation of a Varnashrama college to provide the cornerstone for the development of a Krishna conscious society, which includes positions for the full range of human beings, not just those who could become satisfied as meticulous austere brahmanas. Reading the conversations that are part of those historic Varnashrama walks, we can tell that this is a new approach for the devotees listening to Prabhupada. They are surprised by the idea that Krishna consciousness is not only for brahmanas. This was the beginning of Prabhupada's deliberate move to establish a total Varnashrama structure and not simply to create a group of brahmanas. 3 years later in Mayapur, in Srila Prabhupada's culminating presentation on Varnashrama, he emphatically reiterates his conviction that Varnashram is a critical tool for spreading Krishna consciousness. In a big scale, you cannot make all of them brahmanas or sannyasis, he explains to his disciples. No, that is not possible. This is a small scale. What percentage of people of the world are we attracting? Very insignificant. But if you want to make the whole human society perfect, then this Krishna consciousness movement should be introduced according to Krishna's instructions. If you want to do it in a large scale for the benefit of the whole human society. Now we're picking up some of them, the best. That is one thing. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Para Upakar. Why only a certain section should be picked up? Let the whole mass of people get the benefit of it. But then it is required to be systematic. Therefore, we have to introduce this Varnashram Dharma. It must be done perfectly. It is possible, and people will become happy.
So this is also amazing. Now, now Varnashram is not just for the devotees, but it's also for the public. That not only do we want this for our devotees to be able to stay within Krishna consciousness and practice Krishna consciousness, but we will establish a system whereby anybody can now participate at any level. And then Prabhupada goes on to a whole point where he even says even meat eaters can be part of this. And it's like just like mind blowing, because initially Prabhupada said, yes, very small section, only Brahmanas will be interested, and only these Brahmanas will actually take up Krishna consciousness, which is also what Prabhupada's earlier standard was. Everybody was getting second initiation. Everybody in the initial days were all getting second initiated. Chap, 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 Prabhupada, first initiation, after 6 months, second initiation. Then later Prabhupada said, no. They need to qualify themselves as Brahmana. So he wanted them to study Bhakti Shastra and this and that and all that stuff. Later he said only those who develop the qualities. Why everybody should be Brahmana? Everybody is not Brahmana. Varnashrama is there. Later, towards the end, Prabhupada said, why does everybody need to get initiated?
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. He said everybody doesn't need to get initiated. Because even to chant 16 rounds, how easy. Let them come, let them be disciplined, let them follow the rules, let them, stay within the norms of society. Why do they have to get initiated? So you see that first, everybody is getting Brahma. Second, Prabhupada is like, there's restriction, little bit. You qualify, at least show your education. You're Brahmana, yeah. What's the philosophy, No, are you, is it, how intelligent are you? Okay, show that. Okay, that's not so much. Okay, fine. Then after that, Prabhupada, you should exhibit the qualities of a Brahmana. All devotees don't require. Only those who are preachers, and those who are pujaris, who have exhibit the qualities, only they require Brahminical initiation. All devotees, why does all devotees require Brahminical initiation? Not required. Then Prabhupada says, well, now that we are opening it up for the whole mass of people, everybody doesn't need to get initiated. Because that was an argument. Prabhupada, everybody can chant 16 hours. Okay, why do they? It's fine. How can a meat eater be initiated? If Prabhupada is talking of meat eaters being within a part of a Varnashram community, they are not going to get initiated. Of course, it's done in stages, but the point is, this is the vision. There's no, but that's how Prabhupada, in just the span of 11 years, he changes the conversation. It's a lot, it's huge changes. And why? Prabhupada's principles, the principles of Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada never changed. But as an Acharya, he is making necessary modifications according to time, place, circumstance. And also not as just as an Acharya who is also setting the vision for the next 10,000 years. Prabhupada plays a very unique role in the Guru Parampara. And so Prabhupada has to be that kind of visionary that generations after will refer to Srila Prabhupada's books and instructions, like the way the Sri Vaishnava Acharyas refer to Ramanuja Acharya's words. So like that, so it was duty of Prabhupada to speak all these things. Some of these things we may not see in our lifetime, because it takes steps to get there. Generations also, some cases, but we need to be able to see it. And in one sense, just like we look upon the devotees who just came after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as being great, wonderful people, wonderful devotees. If we follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions, that's how history will view us. Because in one sense, it's a very just like it's far more challenging. It was far more challenging during the time of Narottam Das Thakur and others, that they had to establish the foundational principles of what was Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. There was nothing. The Goswamis had to establish temples, they had to write books, they had to do all of these things, they had to uncover all the holy places of Lord Krishna in Vrindavan. Nothing was there. So we have in that sense, in just like that, the first, second generation of devotees coming after Prabhupada have a very, very important role to play in a time and environment that is just totally against this whole thing. It's the main thing is we have to fight against our own mind. Forget about fighting other people. Our own mind is like it's just such a hard thing to swallow. Just even to conceive of how we're going to do this. It's quite the task. But still, we must try. It's like now, the Goswami's desires to distribute so many books manifest after how many years? They also wanted Krishna consciousness, this knowledge to spread all over the world. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said it 500 years ago. Prithvi Vidyache Jata Nagaradigram. How many centuries did it take? And how many acharyas had to work towards that? So, you kind of have to see that bigger picture also. Just try to play our small, tiny, humble role in that and become benefited. Okay.
But surely devotees within ISKCON are transcendental, his followers suggest. They are Vaishnavas, so they are above Varnashram. Surely they will not be expected to take up different roles, such as Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. But Prabhupada disagrees. To become Vaishnava is not so easy. If to become a Vaishnava is so easy, why do so many fall down? Even though he is proud of his disciples' achievements, that pride doesn't blind him to the fact that the 100% Brahmana approach to making devotees has led to a high dropout rate. Why should a Shudra artificially be made a Brahmana? He challenges them. Let him remain a Shudra, and if he follows strictly the rules and regulations of a Shudra, he'll be as good as a Brahmana. Even if he remains a Shudra, he's a Vaishnava. As a Shudra, he can get perfection. If the philosophy for phase 1 of spreading Krishna consciousness seemed like the Marine Corps slogan, "Are you good enough to get in?" the final phase was more like the Army slogan, "Be all that you can be." Be all that you can be in Varnashram. Even if you can't be a Brahmana, you can still be a Vaishnava, no matter what your occupation is. You can still get spiritual perfection, and you can still go back to Godhead. Just learn how to serve the Supreme Lord by doing your occupational duty. Then you will gain full spiritual knowledge and full satisfaction. Because of its magnanimous spirit and the date it was delivered, February 14th, 1977, this culminating presentation of Varnashram is sometimes called Prabhupada's Mayapur Valentine. Here, then, is real love, to establish a social system that can bring back everyone from the most pious to the most materialistic back home, back to Godhead.
Okay. So, yeah, you have it. And Mataji used to be in Maine. I didn't even know devotees existed all the way up there. Yeah. It's like, you don't even know that's part of the world.
I tried contacting her because several volumes of this book was supposed to be published, but I haven't. Apparently I don't know if she's not practicing anymore.
Yeah,
she's not writing anymore.
She's not practicing is what I heard.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's supposed to be 12 of these volumes or something like that?
Huh?
There's supposed to be 12 of these or something?
12?
I asked your Grimraj when he was here, but I also asked Bhakti Raghava Maharaj if we should continue trying to publish these, but I don't know.
I mean, who's supposed to do it? And what needs to get done? I don't know.
Seems like this would be the chunk of it, but more volumes? It's like, my God.
I don't know what it is. Because she starts off by saying that this present research, Prabhupada on Varnashram and farm community development. And this is the first volume of that.
Wow.
This focuses on the Prabhupada's actual spoken conversations and lectures about Varnashram. I guess, I don't know what else they would necessarily publish, but I guess what could be another publication is the memories that Srila Prabhupada has related in this regard and what devotees have said about how Prabhupada acted on farms, what he instructed devotees, what he told devotees. Like Harishwari Prabhu writes a bunch of stuff about, So like for instance, in Prabhupada visits New Talavan.
I was just thinking about that.
And he's going around and the temple president, Nityananda Prabhu is very proudly showing Prabhupada that they're growing this for the cows and they're growing that for the cows. And Prabhupada's everything for the cow, what about the man? And Prabhupada was disgusted that they didn't grow anything for them. They were only growing for the cows. And so, anyways, Prabhupada's conclusion was that Nityananda had no brains, so, anyways, but these kind of stuff could make another like book, because it gives a kind of contextual, like, okay, what does Prabhupada say? What was this, because there's the lectures and conversations which are direct stuff, but there's other things where Prabhupada is saying, like, which is not necessarily like recorded when they're like walking around and just showing things and, like this. So that would probably be, at least I could think of that being another, particularly at least one volume I can think of it being. I can think of 12 volumes.
So Kalakanta Prabhu said, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I don't know what 12 volumes could consist of. Maybe it's like more specific instructions about, like Shivaram Maharaj has this Varnashrama compendium about the different Varnas. Yeah, but if this is specifically Prabhupada's guidance, then maybe there's instructions about what's a Brahmana, what's a Kshatriya, what's a Vaishya, what's a Shudra, what's a Brahmachari, what's a Grihastha, what's a Sannyasi, what's a Vanaprastha. Take all those instructions from all the lectures, all the conversations, put them, order them. That could be something. So there could be some things like, I would assume so. Maybe then take Prabhupada's instructions on cow protection, put that separately. So maybe there are things like that. It would be wonderful if something like this is comprehensively made. Great benefit to society. Yeah. It's hard to find devotees who are available to research, and then they need to be supported. Otherwise, these scientists produce all this crap only because they get funded. If they had to go and work at a Walmart, you don't see any papers coming out. But it's because they get funded. So actually research on topics related to things like this, including the predecessor Acharya's works and everything, needs to be funded. So we're trying to do a little bit by having an editing team on the other side of this wall. It's Krishna Life's little contribution to Brahminical work. That it's very important because they're helping, Maharaj print these books, and Maharaj is being moved in mission and this and that. Now Mitravan's working on, Vaishnava culture and etiquette. So then that's, so that's a book. So these things are required. Vaishnava culture and etiquette is going to be a huge part of this Varnashram like thing. How do you behave? How are devotees supposed to be? There are all kinds of small things there. For instance, that I remember once when I was secretary, I read one thing Maharaj was saying that, if incense falls on the floor, you can still pick it up, put a few drops of water on it and use it. His reasoning, incense is made on the floor anyways. It is made of earth material, so it's not going to get contaminated by falling on the floor. So you can have that. And you can't really wash earth. So cotton is different. You can wash a cloth. You can't wash earth fragrance. So it's just example. Cow dung also is on the floor, and then you make this little. What do you have that thing? Do. Yeah, these things they're made on the ground only. That's how you make them. They're made on the ground, sun dried on the out on the ground, and like this. So yeah, those are like things that are. And those are things that are part of the Vaishnava culture and etiquette. It's a simple thing. It's a small thing, but it's there. What? Because everything, you would think that, if you drop something, you can't use it. But in this case, it can be used. So it's small things, but it's part of that whole culture. Okay, before we kind of go on to anything else, any questions?
Yeah, I do have a question.
Forgot the question.
No, I want to phrase it properly. Okay, you were talking about New Taliban. Okay, so there's an instance in Translator Diary where somebody asked, this is in 1974, and Nityananda asked Prabhupada whether, about the contradiction in Prabhupada's statements as far as whether he should establish Varnashrama Dharma or just do the best he can. And Prabhupada replied that there are no proper Brahmanas to lead the project, but if you can do it, do it. Prabhupada was pretty much, he was optimistic, but seems like he was pretty also idealistic. Like, yes, the highest ideal, I can pull it up and show it to you as well, but he's saying the highest ideal is to have Varnashrama Dharma, but everybody's Sudra. Everybody's Sudra, so who will actually guide them? Who will be Brahmanas? So my question is, even you were mentioning the point of having everything on a small scale. Is it that when we established our Varnashrama Dharma project, so Prabhupada, he initiated sannyasis, and he said they knew he was going to fall down. He said it's going to be battlefield commission. Battlefield commission. So is it going to be like that, where it's like one was expected to fail? Because it's like, I mean, in one sense, Prabhupada's saying, yeah, I want this to happen, but although nobody's qualified to do it, still I want it to happen. That's kind of seems like that was his overall mood. Like, yes, this needs to happen, although it might not be qualified, you should still do it. So it seems like the initial pilot projects, it seems like it's going to be battlefield commission. I just want to clarify that.
It is an experiment. There's no doubt. There is no hiding the fact that this is an experiment.
So we're expected to fail.
It is a social experiment. I won't say that we're expected to fail, because even in India you can see, the projects are still going on. I don't, what do we consider as success? What do we consider as failure? If you consider New Taliban a failure, that you're seeing something after 50 years of its existence. Yeah, but they did run for 50 years, and there were times when they had a lot of devotees, right? And we're looking at Krishna Life right now, and we started this temple. I mean, we are only 4 years into existence. Okay, turning the 5th year. This December will be 5th year. November will be 5th year. So we've only been for 5 years. You take that into account. Look at, for instance, whatever, the Denver temple had so many people. Los Angeles temple had so many people. They all had so many people. Very successful in many ways. So it in that sense, you can take the duration of it also as into account as to what do you mean. And you can take this in anything, can you not? Start a restaurant. When do you call a restaurant a success? Say it ran well for 10, 20 years. It supported, whatever, 1-2 generations of the family. Then it failed. I don't think they would consider that a failure, would they? But are we expecting something, whether something will run into eternity, that we cannot say for sure. Now, at least if it doesn't fail in the first few years of its existence, that I think in itself is a success. Like the fact that Nandagram has been going on for 12 years now and still going, that's a success. Now, whether the children are going to take it up or not, it's like you start a business, Prabhu, and you don't know your children. We had this fiberglass vendor, you remember the guy who came around? Yeah. See, he was doing this business. His son was not interested in it at all to take over. Finally, he just reneged and he said, okay, I'm going to have to just hand over the business to the workers. Because what's the point of shutting it down? It's doing well. But son's not interested. Anyways, later what happened, some Sapan happened, and the son got, he fell in love with some Muslim girl, which is like the worst thing that could happen. And, and then finally that Muslim girl and after loving him for some time, listened to her parents, ditched him and married someone else. And then this guy was all lamenting and la la la. And in that period, he just suddenly had a change of mind. He said, okay, I'll just listen to my father. And he said, he took up the father's business, and now he's into it. But he wasn't into it. He wasn't into it for 20 years. He couldn't do it. He couldn't interest him at all. Then the son kind of he listened to his father. He went to his business. His father found him a wife and got him married, and it's going on. That's kind of it. You can't call that. From a material sense, you might call that like a happy ending. But
Happily ever after.
and they're feeling whatever. And you don't know. So the son's taking it up. Whether his son will take it up, whether he will have a son at all, you know, you can't say. It's like there's so many things up in the air. So, you know, I think it's a perception of what we think is a success. Because even in the material sense, I mean, like, sure, the Ford company has been going on. That's a rare thing. But you think about, what is this, Slutty Vegan's a success? How many years has it been running?
No.
See, yeah, that's a good answer. That's the perfect answer. Enough to say, oh, there's success, they're making a lot of money. I mean, you know, sometimes we also don't, like, you know, in our effort to kind of like analyze the history of the Krishna conscious movement, we might sometimes be a little harsh in our outlook also. They did make hundreds of devotees. I mean, come on, kidding me? If we made hundreds of devotees, we would have called that a grand success. We have a program where we get, you know, 15 people, we call that a success. You know, forget about making devotees. You know, it's like, wow, so many people actually showed up.
Prabhupada says in the Gita, right? If one person takes this up, we'll consider his mission.
Yeah. That was also the Acharya's outlook. So it's like, you know. So yeah, I mean, after years of running, the Mayapur Gurukul is now more or less shut down. More or less, you know, it's fizzled out of existence. And there's all kinds of, like, you know. But there are devotees. And this is what, you know, Bhakti Vikas Maharaj also speaks about. If you go, what about those Gurukul kids who came out of the Mayapur Gurukul saying that we loved it, this was the best time of our life? Are they all like basically abused, brainwashed people? It's like something was good. It's not that everything was just a big sham. So, I mean, you know, I think my personal opinion, you know, we need to be a little realistic about our expectations of what we expect the outcome to be. And personally, I asked Guru Maharaj what could be considered as a success for this age. If our devotees can stay Krishna conscious, if at least most of them, if not all of them, can avoid getting divorced, and if the children can become Krishna conscious. In this age, if we're doing this, you don't forget about self-sustenance, don't talk about, you know, living all this, just this much. Before I even ended my sentence, Guru Maharaj said in Puri, he said, that would be a grand success.
That's Varnashrama or just in general?
Not for farm community.
Okay.
For farm community. I said, Maharaj, I'm just thinking that the goals for this generation of farm community devotees, I'm thinking if we could achieve this, and even before I ended, he said that would be considered a grand success. I don't exactly see that's a lofty goal in itself, and it's funny because at least two of those goals are just default in India. You marry and you don't get divorced, and you live like a devotee. Sorry, you live like a devotee and you don't get divorced. It's like more or less a given thing. You know, Sunil was complaining to me the other day. This is some days ago, about a couple of months ago. He was complaining how his life was just pure hell because him and his wife were just always fighting. He said, we just can't get along. My entire household life is just pure hell. He said, I don't know, I get very angry, she gets very angry, and we just yell and scream, and we're setting a really bad example for my son. You know, I don't know what to do. I'm so miserable. And he was so miserable that he pretty much spun off for some time. You know, he didn't come around for a while. You know, he wouldn't respond to messages, and you know, he kind of just basically fell off the radar.
From us, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then he did practically almost for more or less for about like almost a year, but we could say about 7-8 months. You know, it was like cricket. You know. So then he started coming around again. Now yesterday, him and his wife are talking philosophy to me. That I just giving an example, and I was just talking about how people in their old age, they're expected to show wisdom. Instead, if they think they want to be relevant in society, and they try to say, oh, why is my family not respecting me? Why is my, why are my children not taking advice from me? I have so many things I can give them advice. But the truth is, generally the younger generation find very old people to be more or less irrelevant as far as practical advice goes. They can give them wisdom, but that's another thing. That is appreciated. But in terms of exactly like running, where to start? Where should you open a restaurant? The older people, they can't give this advice. In that sense, they become irrelevant in one sense. They're not consulted for these things. But if the old people don't understand this, they just get frustrated. And Bhagavatam speaks about all this. How these old people are just neglected. And they suffer a lot because they're stupid. They haven't developed any spiritual wisdom. So then they were saying, the other day we were talking to each other, you have white hair, I have white hair, what the hell are we fighting about? That's a level of realization. She said, look, my hair is getting grey, your hair is also getting grey, and they're laughing and talking. And she said, after we're starting to realize this and we're chanting Hare Krishna, we're just saying, why are we wasting our life like this? What am I going to achieve? So, somehow, they are able to quickly catch it, just like, dry firewood quickly catches fire. They're able to quickly start to connect, even meat eaters that, but they're able to catch these concepts and, and they're trying to fix their household life. But if we can do that in modern society, for those who come from, difficult backgrounds, broken families, and things like this, and somehow we are able to just show a simple family life, and things are not expected to be ideal, but they're devotees, they're committed to practicing Krishna consciousness, they are married, and their children become devotees. It's a big one. In India, they only have to work on the last one, because the first two are more or less a given.
The children becoming devotees?
Yeah, they have to work on that. They have to work on that. Even there, you will find a much higher rate of children becoming devotees. They'll become devotees of, sorts easily.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
Is it possible that even though one undergoes the Garbhadana Samskara sacrifice, will Varna Sankara be a result of that if there's not a proper culture for them to be brought up in? Or
It is possible. The Garbhadan Samskar increases chances. But ultimately, it's not that one can see. Garbhadan Samskar also works in a manner that it's ultimately an impregnation of consciousness also. See, there is consciousness also that's getting transferred from the father and the mother. And so the father and mother should have also led good lives with good consciousness. Because it's not that you don't lead proper lives and just before the time of conception they chant 64 rounds and then everything is okay. It doesn't really, it helps, but that's in itself that's not going to work. There is a bigger picture to it. There's a bigger picture about what the parents are doing at the other times. And what their consciousness is. That plays a role. But still, in the end of everything, even Supreme Personality of Godhead has had asuras as his children. So what to speak of humans? Varadeva is asura. As his son.
What's his name?
Narakasura.
No, yeah.
Also known as Baumas.
Yeah, Baumasura, Narakasura. So it's what can you say? This Bhumi Devi is consort of the Supreme Lord, Vaishnavi, is Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Advaita Acharya had sons who didn't recognize him and didn't follow him. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, our own Srila Prabhupada. So, listen, it's possible, but the science is there to increase the probability of it. But it does, the other factors do play a role. It is within the material realm after all. So, it's yeah. So these things are factors also. But you increase the chances. You increase chances. It's like trying to find a good muhurta, good time to do something. Doesn't mean that absolutely that you can just go and lie down in your bed and everything will happen successfully. You still got to do your part. There's always a chance of something going wrong. But okay, but still, better increase the chances of something going well. So, you ever flown kites?
Yeah.
Flown kites. So you got to catch the wind. So the day is good, everything is good, but sometimes the kite won't fly. If it's I've had that experience. Or this, it looks like the wind is okay and this and that, and the kite flies off and just it breaks because the wind is too strong or something. Or anyways, I fly the kite, and then some other fellow is flying the kite, and he decides to cut my string. So he goes and he rubs it, and then my kite flies off. And then I have to go and buy another kite. So it's like that. Favorable wins everything, but ultimately to sail, it's like you gotta catch the Any other questions?
You have another question?
No. Okay. I'll read a nice anecdote. The horse manure problem of 1894.
Oh. New York.
Huh?
New York?
Yeah, you know about this? You know about this, huh? Where did you read it?
I don't remember.
Okay. The 15 to 30 pounds of manure produced daily by each beast, multiplied by 150,000 horses in New York City, resulted in more than 3 million pounds of horse manure per day that somehow needed to be disposed of.
That's so much.
Speaking about
That's not to mention the daily 40,000 gallons of horse urine. In other words, the cities reeked. As Morris says, the stench was omnipresent. Here are some fun bits from his article. Urban streets were minefields that needed to be navigated with the greatest care. Crossing sweepers stood on street corners for a fee that they would clear a path through the mire for pedestrians. Wet weather turned streets into swamps and rivers of muck, but dry weather brought little improvement. The manure turned into dust, which was then whipped up by the wind, choking pedestrians and coating buildings. Even when it had to be removed from the streets, the manure piled up faster than it could be disposed of. Early in the century, farmers were happy to pay good money for the manure. But by the end of the 1800s, stable owners had to pay to have it carted off because the farmers didn't want it anymore, and farmers were reducing. People weren't farming anymore. As a result of this glut, vacant lots in cities across America became piled high with manure. In New York, these sometimes rose to 40 or even 60 feet.
oh my gosh, 60 feet. I mean, that's crazy. That is like a whole building. That's ridiculous.
We need to remind ourselves that horse manure is an ideal breeding ground for flies which spread disease. Morris reports that deadly outbreaks of typhoid and infant diarrheal diseases can be traced to spikes in the fly population. Comparing fatalities associated with horse-related accidents in 1916, Chicago versus automobile accidents in 1997, he concludes that people were killed nearly 7 times more often back in the good old days. The reasons for this are straightforward. Horse-drawn vehicles have an engine with a mind of its own. The skittishness of horses added a dangerous level of unpredictability to 19th century transportation. This was particularly true in a bustling urban environment full of surprises that could shock and spook the animals. Horses often stampeded, but a more common danger came from the horses kicking, biting, and trampling bystanders. Children were particularly at risk. falls, injuries, and maltreatment also took a toll on the horses themselves. So, in 1880, more than 3 dozen dead horses were cleared from New York streets every day, nearly 15,000 a year. It's a little piece of little suffering history of how when you take things out of their natural environment and you try to put them in some artificial like thing, you're just going to result with so much misery and so many problems. Which is why America was very interested in getting the motor cars and how the government supported, Henry Ford and other people in like developing, because they really wanted to get rid of these horse carriages. And which is why that feeling still is there. Maybe now, not so much now, but in the past, what is this primitive thing? But it's because, humans aren't meant to live like this. Humans aren't meant to live in cities at all, actually. Yes, Vedic cities are there. Vedic cities are very different to modern cities. But this kind of stuff, this is crazy. And just see how miserable. But still, you can think about it. Even this is enough. Like, why would you, one day you come into the city, why would you still live there? Because of material desires. Material desires are so strong, people tolerate all kinds of things that they should never tolerate. Maybe our, descendants at some point of time will look at us and think, how the hell did they live in these kind of places? If our descendants, maybe Krishna willing, these farm projects go well and everything, and our descendants think, how did my grandfather live on a street where the brothel was down the street? Something like that. It's not supposed to, certain things, in the Vedic sense, you don't tolerate things. But, the thing is, because of a lack of self-realization, because of a lack of proper understanding, what they thought is, one material solution. So they replace the material problem with another material problem in the name of a solution. So now you have a car problem. You have so many diseases that are coming out of it. You probably could calculate the fatality. I don't think they can even calculate the fatalities you can these days, because you don't know where the disease comes from, what kind of pollution, whether it comes from water, where does this cancer come from? Nobody knows. You don't know. They say maybe it's this. It's probably that.
It's all the things.
But yeah, it's like so many things. They say all this GMO product causes cancer. This causes. You don't know where it comes from. But maybe if you add everything up, along with motor car accidents, and probably the fatality rate is higher. I know people are getting born a lot, but whatever. That's falling also. Birth rate is falling. Anyways, just thought I'd read some nectar at the end. So, okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai.